Hi, my name is Lenny, and I'm obviously a senior. My dad is Doc Sal, one of the upper school history teachers. I've known about senior speeches since the day my dad walked me into my kindergarten classroom for the first time. I always imagined standing in the upper school auditorium, taking a deep breath, and saying, "Good morning." You would all say good morning back, and I would launch into some speech about New Mexico, the High Mountain Institute, Girl Scouts, or some other adventure I had been on. My dad would have set up the microphone and tested it that morning. He would be messing with his computer as I spoke, trying to get the assembly slides up on the screen behind me. Obviously, much of this has changed. When 7-year-old Lenny toddled in behind my dad on winter mornings during kindergarten, I was eager to help him set up for senior speeches. I would run after him because he still walks like a New Yorker, and I walked like a kid toddling through the candy aisle, stopping to look at every sugary treat. We would go into the maintenance office at the top of the ramp, and eventually, when it moved next to the dish room in the cafeteria, you would go there while I waited eagerly outside the door. You would grab the microphone, and I would ask to hold it. After I dropped it, putting a nice dent in the top, around October of first grade, I lost the privilege to hold it for a while. From the cafeteria, still running to keep up, we would enter the upper school auditorium, where I would turn on the lights and roll out the podium, and you would drop down the screen and turn on the microphone. We would then test all the systems, and I'd be off to early birds. In middle school, I became too cool for you. I walked past the dark auditorium while you got the microphone and headed down the steps to middle school. As I began to ignore you in the hallways and dreaded sharing upper school with you, 7th grade Lenny made a terrible discovery. You would be an advisor for my grade. This is obviously the worst thing that could ever happen. People would have my dad as a teacher and advisor. You would be tied to my grade forever. There is nothing worse than people thinking your dad is cool. 8th grade was spent blocking out this fear and continuing to ignore your presence as I practiced walking the halls as if you did not exist. When the first assembly of my upper school years rolled around, I gathered with my friends crammed into the front rows of the upper school auditorium, trying desperately to avoid any association with you. As the time for assembly started to pass, I began to fear what might be happening. You came from backstage, the dented microphone in hand, your bright orange fleece was half-zipped with one sleeve rolled up, and your cowboy hat was tilted off your head with your giant coffee cup precariously resting in your other hand. Without warning, you jumped off the stage with a loud crash. Thanks for that. I will never forget the laughs and looks from my classmates who knew our connection, despite the fact I had desperately tried to be disconnected from you. Mom died a few months later, and it became blatantly obvious to anyone who had not yet made the connection that we were related. I was forced to be close to you. I'm thankful for that every day. I cherish the car rides that are just you and me, where you drive and I spit out every thought on my mind. You listen and sometimes throw in a comment or two, but you always seem to know what I'm talking about, thanks to the fact that you have advised or taught half of my classmates. During sophomore year, I told you I wanted to go far away to the High Mountain Institute in Colorado for my fall semester of junior year, and you encouraged me to apply. You were wary that the money would not work out, and you cautioned me not to get my hopes up, but when I called you from the Philadelphia airport in March of 2019, on my way to India with an SCH trip, to tell you I got in, you were excited for me. When my plane landed in Doha 12 hours later, you had sent Miss O a message saying the money worked out and I could go. You let me take control of my life for that time, from booking my own plane tickets to tying up my own loose ends. You knew I needed space to grow on my own. I spent the fall of 2019 in Colorado, living in a boarding school with 45 classmates where we backpacked, lived in cabins heated by wood stoves, and cooked meals for all of our classmates. For the spring semester, you were my history teacher. The stories you told in A-Push reminded me of when I was ashamed to be related to you, and you let me walk out of the room multiple times when your stories trotted all too close to embarrassing territory. I returned from Colorado with an intractable post-traumatic headache, a fancy word for a headache that doesn't go away after a trauma. And you took control again. You stepped up to help me advocate for things I didn't have the words to say, and still helped me to explain to others the constant aching in my brain that gets in the way of everything I do. To my fellow students, you may be wondering what this speech has to do with you. First, I want to share that many of the conversations and late-night work sessions I have with my dad circle back to how incredible each and every one of you are. I get to hear from Doc how much he cares about each of you and how much passion he has for his job. Most importantly, though, I wrote this speech to give thanks. Tell the people you are thankful for that you are thankful for them. Don't wait until your senior speech to thank your parents. At this point, I am basically out the door of my house, and I will never be able to fully share my gratitude with my dad, but I wrote him a speech to try and make up for it. David, Doc Sal, Dad, thank you for everything you do for the community and for me. I love you.